Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 8 of the 2018 Tata Steel tournament. And this round will be remembered for a very long time for what happened in the game between Magnus Carlsen against Gawain Jones from England. Yes, the world champion grabbed the headlines again. As you can see from this picture, it was a tough game for both of them. This is the position after 21 moves. You see both players with their head in their hand, and in the background you see Wesley Soder on the right and Fabiano Caruana on the left. They came to have a look because it was quite a crazy game. Let's get into it. Carlsen was white, Jones was black. Played on the 21st of January 2018. E4 from the world champion, C5 from his opponent who qualified for the Masters group by winning the Challengers group in 2017. Gawain Jones is a Grandmaster from England. Knight f3, d6, d4, c takes, knight takes, we are in a Sicilian opening, knight f6, knight c3, and Gawain Jones played the dragon, which is one of the openings in his repertoire. Carlsen said afterwards he had not expected the dragon, so he had not done a lot of preparation for it. Bishop e3, bishop g7, f3, knight c6, queen d2, and we have opposite side castling. Jones castles king side, Carlsen castles queen side. The dragon is a very aggressive, interesting opening. d5, and here one of the variations is to take on d5, and then knight takes d5, knight takes c6, b takes c6, bishop d4 to oppose the monster dragon bishop, and then e5. That's the main variation, but Carlsen played another variation, and instead of taking on d5 he played queen e1. e5 is the main move, attacking the knight. Knight takes c6 was played, b takes, and now Carlsen took on d5, knight takes, and here there's a few different ways to play for white. One option given in the live broadcast where Grandmaster Hansen and Grandmaster Sokolov gave commentary, they showed bishop c5. White will not give black the usual dragon play, but he sits on the better pawn structure. White's pawn structure is better than black's with bishop c5. In this variation it's not possible to play bishop c5 because of bishop h6 check. The king has to go to b1, and then knight takes c3 check, and you cannot take with the queen because of checkmate in one move, so you have to take with the pawn, and now white's pawn structure is also shattered, and after queen a5 black has good play here. Black is better here. So bishop c5 is an idea in the dragon, but not in this particular position. Carlsen played bishop c4, bishop e6 from Jones, and knight e4 is now the main theoretical move, but Carlsen played his king to b1. Rook e8 from Jones, knight e4 now, f5 kicking the knight, and the knight went to g5, threatening to take the bishop on e6, and white will have the bishop pair. Jones does not allow that and plays bishop c8, and here a normal move is h4 to protect the knight. Jones showed another variation after the game. He showed that white can also play bishop b3 here. Looks a bit odd because there is f4, and now the knight is hanging and the bishop is hanging, but there is knight e4, f takes bishop, and then c4, and this knight is also pinned, so white will win his piece back. But this is one of the most exciting moments in this tournament, and probably one of the biggest blunders ever to be played by a world champion. Carlsen did not play the straightforward h4, he did not play the more complicated bishop b3, he played g4 here, and Jones's reply was f4, and we have that situation again with two pieces hanging. Such is the respect for Magnus Carlsen's playing strength that many pundits and commentators thought this was a positional piece sacrifice by the world champion. But Carlsen gave an interview after the game and said there should not be a debate. That was obviously a very crude blunder. I was lucky that I got any play after that, but I had nothing to lose. I had some compensation, but it's more than a little embarrassing. Because White is just losing a piece here. Carlsen played h4 and there went the bishop. The queen took back, at least he gets 1 pawn compensation. Of course, queen takes e3 is possible because this knight is pinned. h6, kicking the knight. And if you now go back to e4, then there is bishop e6, bringing the bishop into the defense. And now White has no compensation at all. So that was not an option. And Carlsen found queen c5. Fabiana Caruana said after the game that Carlsen was a bit lucky in this game, that he still had some counterplay. Sometimes when you blunder a piece, it's over straight away. But in this case, Carlsen still had something to play for. Taking the piece is not good. Yes, black is now 2 pieces up, but there is queen takes c6. And of course, it all involves the pinning of the knight, which is pinned 2 ways. Here's a variation. Bishop e6 is the best move. Then bishop takes d5. The bishop takes d5. Rook takes d5, hitting the queen. Queen b6. Queen takes. A takes. And h takes g5. And White has 3 pawns for the piece. And should have drawing chances here. So taking the knight is not great for black. Of course, black wants to win, being a piece up. And here, black played bishop b7. And Gawain Jones said afterwards, with a few accurate moves, I should be winning. But he said the light squares are very annoying. Of course, here, Jones was playing for a win. Carlsen retreats his knight that is attacked. And rook e6. Jones calls this a bit clumsy, but I thought it was useful to defend the d6 square. And of course it's also unpinning the knight that way. h5 from Carlsen. And here it was Anish Giri who said after his game that Jones should have played g5 here. He had seen this during the game. And he said there is a theoretical position of the dragon where White has a bishop on c5 and black has a pawn on f7. And that is a theoretical position, so that's probably about equal or maybe a bit better for White. And now we have a position where the black bishop is completely missing. Yes, the f-pawn is also missing, but of course this should be winning for black with an extra piece. Gawain Jones said afterwards that he had seen the g5 move and that he knows that he should have played it, but he played queen b6, saying it was hard to resist threatening to swap the queens when you're a piece up. And Carlsen played g5 here, and at this moment he got some hope, as he said, because the position is now getting very messy. In this picture you can see on the board that Carlsen has just played h5, his opponent is not at the board, so Carlsen lets himself show his emotions, and this is his there is some hope face. Here a possible variation is bishop f8, hitting the queen, and then the queen can go back to g1. And black can swap the queens, rook takes, and this is indeed a messy position where black is still better, but White has got some chances for equality, or maybe even more. But after g5, Jones decided to take on g5, and Carlsen played queen a3, keeping the queens on the board. He's not worried about capturing the g5 pawn, he can do that later. Of course now, black is a full piece up. White does not have any pawns for the piece at the moment. Rook b8, and Gawain Jones said afterwards he was trying to get some counterplay against White's king. And in this picture you see Gawain Jones giving Carlsen the stare after rook b8, trying to find out what his opponent thought of that move. There are some variations here. One of them is queen d3. And then Jones said he would be happy to play bishop a6 and swap this monster bishop on c4. And that's indeed good for black. Of course, black also has checkmate threats against white's king. Another variation after rook b8 is knight take g5, and Jones said afterwards that he was surprised that Carlsen did not go for this. This is the variation he showed: bishop f8 hitting the queen, queen d3, bishop a6 threatening checkmate. So b3 is played, and then bishop takes c4. They also quickly looked at queen a5, but there's no checkmate. Knight takes e6. Knight c3 check, but the king goes to c1, there's no checkmate, and white is winning here. So that doesn't work. After b3, black has to play bishop takes c4, queen takes c4, which is an equal position. But Carlsen did not go for this knight takes g5 idea. After rook b8, he played b3, dealing with any checkmate threats and also intending to get the queen back into the game this way if black plays bishop f8. Queen d8 from Gawain Jones. He had realized that he's allowing too much counterplay, and he now protects the g5 pawn with the queen. It's time for Carlsen to start collecting some pawns. He is a full piece down, he doesn't have any pawns compensation, so he can take pawns on a7 or g6, and he decides to take the pawn on a7. The queen is not in danger of getting trapped there. White is now threatening knight takes g5, because if the queen takes, then this rook will be hanging. It's very hard for Jones to come up with moves here. The position is very complicated and black has no clear plan. Of course, black's two bishops are very bad pieces. This bishop is looking at that pawn, and this bishop is not much better. White can also play with ideas with rook d to g1. In the live broadcast they called this positional domination for white, and also the clock was not great. 47 minutes for Carlsen versus 20 minutes for Gawain Jones, and we're only on move 26. In the end, Jones decided to take on h5. Carlsen took back, and rook g6. Rook takes g5 from Carlsen, praised as a very good move by Gawain Jones. He took, Carlsen took back, and black is under a terrible attack, and Carlsen has now two pawns for the piece. You cannot take on g5 as mentioned earlier because of queen takes b8 check, bishop f8, and that bishop goes off the board as well. So after knight takes g5, Jones played queen c8 with the idea of playing rook a8, rook g1, activating his rook, and rook a8 is planned, queen b6, and now knight e6 is a threat with a double attack on the bishop, and also bishop takes d5 is a threat. If you take back, there's queen g6 as a possible idea. These ideas were given in the live broadcast by the grandmasters Hansen and Sokolov. Rook a6 was played by Gawain Jones, and Carlsen did not blunder his queen. One blunder was enough for one game. He did not take that rook because of course that gives up the pin of the knight, and knight takes b6 is now a legal move. So Carlsen had to play his queen that's under attack of the rook. He played queen c5 with the threat queen e7, which is a very strong move. And Ivan Sokolov, Grandmaster Ivan Sokolov in the live broadcast said, look at the bishop on b7. The only difference between that bishop and a pawn is that the bishop has some protection of the d5 square. Apart from that, it's not doing anything more than a pawn would do. Queen d7 was played by Jones, and knight e4. And this was called a typical Carlsen move. He doesn't see an immediate tactical win, so he's just improving his pieces. And now there's a big threat of knight f6. This knight can't take because it's still pinned, and this bishop cannot take because it's pinned, so a knight on f6 would be a fork on king and queen. A lot of errors there. Jones played king h8 to deal with the knight f6 threat. Queen f2, now there's threats of queen h4 and knight c5 with a fork. Queen e7 was played by Jones, and here you can play Queen h2 check, King g8, Queen h6. That's a possible way to play, but Carlsen decided to take some material here. He took on a6. Bishop took back, and now he played Queen h2 check, King g8 and Queen h6. Queen a7 from Jones, attacking the rook on g1. Queen e6 check, King f8, Rook g5, Knight e3, and Queen d6. Another move would have been Knight f6, threatening checkmate on e8 with the Queen and on h7 with the Knight. And if you play Queen f7, only move, because you cannot, after Knight f6 you cannot take the Knight either because of Rook g8 checkmate. So if you play Queen f7, then there is Queen d6 check, Queen e7, Knight h7 check. The king has to keep protecting the queen. Queen takes, king takes, and rook takes, and white is decisive material up. That was another option, but Queen d6 was played by Carlsen. King f7, the 40th move, both players have made the time control, and Carlsen played Knight c5. Now he's threatening Queen e6, followed by Knight d7. Jones played Bishop c8 to stop Queen coming to e6, but the last move of the game was Rook takes g7 check, and Jones resigned. He resigned because if you take the Rook and you have no choice, then there is Queen takes e5 check, King f7, and the Knight goes, and White is 3 pawns up and has a good Knight versus a bad Bishop. Quite amazing how Magnus Carlsen turned this game around, and it led to commentary even from his rival Anish Giri that Carlsen is so strong that he's a piece stronger than anybody else. Results of round 8, poor Huyefan lost again, this time against Fabiano Caruana, who also has a bad tournament. Adiban and Karyakin played a draw, as did Wei Yi and Matlakov. Giri beat the tournament leader Mamedyarov. That was a big result. Kramnik and So played a draw, as did Svidler and Anand, and we saw Carlsen against Jones. What a game that was. The standings, 3 leaders we have now after Mamedyarov lost to Giri. Giri, Carlsen and Mamedyarov on 5.5 out of 8. 2 players half a point behind, Kramnik and So, and then 2 players half a point behind them, Anand and Karyakin, and 2 players on 50%, Peter Svidler and Maxim Matlakov. Jones on -1, Wei Yi on -2 together with Caruana. Adiban has 2 points, and Huyefan still only managed to play 2 draws, and she lost her other 6 games. Monday the 22nd of January will be a rest day, and on Tuesday the 23rd of January these will be the pairings. Jones against Ho, Anand, Carlsen, that will be quite a clash. So against Svidler, Mamedyarov, Kramnik, Matlakov, Giri, Karyakin against Wei Yi, and Caruana against Adiban. I will be here after the round to tell you what happened. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. Please leave a comment, and if you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.